So here's the situation. You saw a job ad, you think it fits you just right, and now you want to apply for this position. So you will assemble your application package, which typically consists of your CV, your list of publications, and any other documents that will be required for this job. But now you also need to write a cover letter that goes with it, typically an email. And here's how you do that. So first of all, in the subject line, it's very important that you already refer to either the position code that you're applying for or the kind of position that you're applying for, so that it gets in the right channels from the beginning and isn't overlooked. So pay attention to the subject line and definitely do not leave it empty. And don't use generic stuff like application or something. Say that you are applying for this and this job. Then in the email, who are you addressing? You need to know if there's a search committee or if it's addressed to just a PI that advertised, for example, a postdoc or PhD position for a grant. And then you write that name or the search committee name in there and make sure you spell that name right. This is leaving sort of a bad impression from the very beginning if you have a spelling mistake in the name. So I would write that cover letter in an email. You can also attach it separately if you want to the email message as a text file, but I would write that message in an email. And so therefore make sure it is not too long. Think of it as maybe a maximum or so of half of a page of text, so that it is not tedious to look through it all. If you're applying for a professorship, of course, this is quite different, but in this video I just talk about PhD and postdoc positions. Now, whatever you do, don't send a boilerplate email message that you could just use to apply to any job in the world and that has no specifics in it. You're just wasting everybody's time doing that. So make sure you tailor the text in the cover letter to the position that you are applying to. So start out with, of course, what position you are applying to, and then state who you are and what your current status is. For example, state that you have recently graduated with a PhD, or that your graduation is planned within the next 2 months, or whatever the case may be. Say what your current status is. Next, then state specifically how you will fit that position. So this is when you refer back to the job ad and you extract all the pieces that are demanded in the job ad, like the skills you're supposed to have, the degrees you're supposed to have, the desirables that come with that position, and then match them to your CV and your abilities. And then make sure that you spell that out in the cover letter. That's actually the single most important thing, because otherwise people may overlook it in your CV if it's not particularly emphasized in your CV. But make sure that the cover letter serves as sort of the guide to the person reading your CV and looking at your entire package, as a guide how specifically you meet the evaluation criteria. Because the next step is what will happen once you're meeting sort of the basic requirements for a job. In most countries, definitely here, you have to fill out a table. You're looking through the various criteria for that job, and then you're scoring all the candidates in terms of how they meet these criteria. So therefore, make it easy on the person reading your cover letter and looking at your package by pointing out how specifically you fill these requirements and what's special about you. Now, many people write how having this position would help you, would further your career goals and what you could learn. This is fine, but this is not the primary reason why somebody would hire you, because they hire you for carrying out a specific task or a specific project, let's say. So, I mean, you could add that. I wouldn't emphasize that point, and generally I would just leave that out. But what you should emphasize and definitely not leave out is what you would bring to this lab or this position. This is what you should make very clear in your cover letter. This is also your opportunity to make sure that you really understand the demands on this particular job, and that you maybe also can demonstrate that you thought this through. So for example, if high throughput sequencing is one of the requirements of this job, you could say, well, I've done high throughput sequencing, I've done the lab work, but of course I'm also very familiar with the bioinformatics, and I've used these and these pipelines and packages. And I also am quite familiar with how to analyze the data that come out in the end statistically. And I've shown this in publications like such and such. This way you signal that you are quite aware that it's not just lab work, for example, but then there's also other downstream steps in the process that you know and you can anticipate and you can bring to this position. Also, this may come up during the interview, but it's very good if you already in the cover letter maybe can put in a statement, what have you actually done yourself? Because very many times when it's complex tasks, it's unclear what you actually contributed, for example, to a manuscript. So then it's fine if you say in the cover letter you have done, for example, the lab work for the high throughput sequencing as well. Now you have finished with describing who you are, what your motivation is, and what you can actually bring to the table. So this is the main part of that cover letter. But now in the end, sometimes people write something like, and I look forward to hearing from you soon, or I look forward to a speedy reply or something. And you may think this is just one way to end an email, but it's actually not a very good way to end an email at all, because it seems like you're pressuring the person to respond to you fast. And so that leaves sort of a negative impression. So definitely don't write that in the end at all. And also don't demand the meeting, because you're in no position to demand a meeting, because first of all, your application will be screened, and if you're in the shortlisted pool of people to be interviewed, then you will get an in-person meeting. So instead write something like, I'm happy to provide any further information should you require it, and I look forward to potentially talking to you about the position in person. This is a very neutral and very friendly statement. It shows that you are ready to provide more and that you look forward to interacting, but you're not demanding anything and not asking for anything. Just make sure you don't do that at the end of your message. Well, then finally, you will attach all your documents. You could also attach a more formatted version of your cover letter to the message as a PDF. Typically, people attach PDFs. There may be specific requirements for the position in terms of what you all need to attach. Like some positions require that you attach your copies of your diploma or other things like that. It's usually your CV publication list at a very minimum. And so make sure you follow the instructions given in the job ad, because sometimes people demand all these files be sent in one PDF file. If that is the case, don't send 5 PDF files, send 1 PDF file. Name the PDF file, not just application, because everybody will do that. Name it with your name and then job application. And don't send Word documents, because some servers, like our server, filters out certain types of Word documents, and then your entire email will never be seen. Or people just don't like opening other people's Word documents when they come from unknown sources generally. So make sure you send your documents as a PDF. What you can do, but don't necessarily have to do, is if you would like to attach a paper that you have written that you think would be particularly helpful for that particular position that you're applying to, you might want to attach that one. You could also incorporate it into the same PDF. But you can also attach it separately. And you might refer to that in your cover letter saying, for your information, I've attached PDF of a paper where I've done such and such, because it's probably important for this position. So this way you save the person reviewing your file the effort of looking up this particular paper. Maybe they don't have access to the particular journal, so that's actually not a bad idea to do that. Other than that, attach your CV. I have another video where I explain how to organize your CV and what to put into it. And off you go. Now, what to expect next? Typically, you will get a confirmation of receipt. Depending on the country and the culture, this may take quite a while to get acknowledgement of receipt. Don't keep nagging people about the status of the particular application, because sometimes that takes quite a bit of time and involves several instances, for example, or different committees that look at this. If you haven't heard in a long while, of course, then it's totally fine to ask if the material was received safely. But don't keep pestering people about it. And then typically you will be informed about the outcome. You will be, for example, invited for an interview, or you will be rejected. Well, I hope this was helpful, and good luck with your next application. Tschüss.